Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Connection week 152. And it is exciting to be here. Another week into the summer, trying to know, take it all in and in the moment with everything that's going on, and kind of try to connect with everyone. There's always so much going on, keeping track of where is everyone and what's everyone doing. And I know that everyone has like their own kind of structure in the summer, right? Or the lack of structure. And for some of you, it may be that your kids are off to camp and things are kind of quieter. Maybe you have more kids around. Maybe they're at camp even just during the day. Maybe you have grandkids coming to visit with your married kids. Maybe you're out in the country. Maybe you're still going to your regular job. Everything's normal. Everything feels the same. It's just hotter. Whatever it is, what I wanted to talk about is, not just a topic that's only relevant for the summer. Um, it may be that this is something that you deal with all year. I definitely do. But the summer can definitely feel even more of an overwhelm in terms of like keeping control of what's going on in the kitchen or in the home or just in general, feeling like you have control over what's going on in your house. And like I said, it can feel especially like overwhelming when you have more kids home, maybe like kids are generally at yeshiva, or here, like some of my kids are in Opana, or they're like barely home during the year, but in the summer, kids can be around more. Or maybe, ooh, sorry about that. I don't even know who's calling me. Um, it may be that you have grandkids and kids coming to visit. It may be that just because there's like you're trying to do more activities, or you're trying to get kids out of the house, you're entertaining, that you just don't have as much time. You're not home as much. You're not around as much to make time to make Seder. And in general, whenever there's this experience of like, you're not the only one who's running the kitchen. I find like the kids are up later because they don't have to get up as early for school. And so I might wake up to them, seeing that like what they made for dinner at 10 o'clock at night, right? So in general, we often have to deal with the fact that as much as we may like to keep our home a certain way or like to keep things looking a certain sense of tidiness, that when other people are involved, which thank God when we have families, there are other people, we have to deal with that reality that we don't fully control what's going on in the home. Right. And I've definitely spoken to a lot of women over the years who struggle with this. And it can definitely be a struggle. Like you clean up a certain way, you want it a certain way, you want it to look a certain way, you want it to feel a certain way when you come home or when other people come home. But the reality is that other people are using the home, and it's also their home, right? Sometimes it's even this like acceptance, and we're definitely going to start with acceptance as we usually do. This acceptance of the fact that as much as we may feel mostly the most responsible for the home, and we may feel that it reflects most on us, it doesn't, even if people think it does. The reality is that it's not only our home, right? And sometimes I've shared with women that feeling of like that to get curious with yourselves, like how comfortable do you want others to feel in your home, including your husband, including your children, right? It's the more we that people will help more, people will feel more engaged, people will feel more comfortable when they also feel that they have autonomy, that it's also their home, which means that they can do things in the way that they want, which means they will do things, right? And we could stand there over them with like a a bullwhip or whatever, or a sponge or a broom, or picking everything up and putting everything away. But how comfortable will they feel in that situation, right? How much will they feel like it's their home, that they also want to have um want to feel a certain way in? How much will they feel like they're contributing when they do things in the home, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I'm just like helping you, or I don't want to, right? So there definitely is a always this like benefit that comes from recognizing and accepting that it's not just our home. Right. As much as, again, we may feel kind of responsible for it. And this is where we also, it's so powerful to recognize the fears that come up when we notice that things are a little bit messy or are a mess, right? And a lot of fears can come up for people, whether it's fears of, wait, I have to sneeze. Excuse me. I'm here. Okay. Whether it's fears of, other people walking in and what will they think, whether it's a fear of our children, whether it's a fear. Excuse me. Someone forgot to take their allergy pill this morning. I started feeling it when I was putting the kids to bed. Okay. Whether it's that fear of like, what will people think? How will people see me? Am I a mess? Are we functional? Like, there can be a lot of fears that come up, a lot of thoughts of what other people will think. And look, I'm not sitting here saying we should just say, forget it all. It doesn't matter, right? There is a reality that we like things to be some sense of tidy, right? We often have to let go of that perfection, but that's what I'm talking about here is that we may like things to be a certain sense of tidy. We may want that our home be presented in a certain way. And there is so much power to making peace with the fact that it's not going to be perfect, right? And all we can do is our enough, right? Enough. We can be concerned about it and we can do the best we can, but noticing that as soon as we make ourselves crazy about it, which usually translates to making other people crazy about it, what ends up happening? We're always going to pay for it somewhere. So if we're completely stressing everybody out or not allowing people to be autonomous in the kitchen or stressing people about cleaning or whatever it is, it's likely going to create feelings of people not wanting, maybe not feeling comfortable being home, maybe relying on you more to do their cooking or the cleaning or whatever it is, whether it's more like groans and not wanting to participate in the taking care of everything. Um, there is a lot to recognizing that the more we give people space to be kind of independent in the home and make their food and clean up after themselves and all of that, we're actually setting it up for them to feel a sense of responsibility for the home, right? That they also want it to be to be a certain sense of cleanliness or to feel more responsible for it as opposed to they're doing it because you told them to, because you made them. And if anything, there's so much great tools that come from our children learning how to cook, learning how to clean, right? But yes, does that mean we have to let go of what the house is going to look like? A lot. We do. It's true. So there's a lot of acceptance of the fact that it's not always going to look the way I want it to because I'm not the only one that lives here. Thank God, right? Is this resonating with all of you? Tell me what's coming up for you as you're hearing all this. Is this helpful? Is this elementary? Is this like mind blowing? Like, tell me where you're at here in the comments. I want to hear. And there's a lot, definitely acceptance is a big piece in everything, but especially in, how things look in the home. Yeah, it's true. And, we can always get into our picture of how we think it should be. And this is where we really get to make that shift from should to desire, right? It should look a certain way. Well, who said, right? Who said that a home with kids and grandkids and busy mothers and busy wives and like busy people should look a certain way? Maybe scenes, maybe women um who like that's what they did their whole day. Maybe you like if that's how it is if you have full-time help. I always tell my clients like there are homes where there is full-time cleaning help. It literally is a full-time job to keep a house looking spotlessly clean, right? And even those homes, a lot of stuff, right? So we want to get curious, like where do our stories come from? That's what it should be, and then we can replace that with I want it to be that way. I want it to be clean. I would love for my house to be clean. Okay, what am I willing to do to make that happen? And what I'm willing to accept so that I'm not stressed, right? So what am I willing to do? Am I willing to stay up later every night? Am I willing to then sacrifice on my sleep? Am I willing to sacrifice on my relationship with others that I'm stressing out about it? Am I willing to give up time in the morning to do it? Am I willing to pay a cleaning person? Am I willing to get a dishwasher? Am I willing to ask for more help? That's another tool, by the way, is that we can definitely ask for help. So hold on, let's get to that one. What am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? And then what am I willing to accept? Right? I may want it to look a certain way, but let me also acknowledge the reality based on the reality of my situation right now. It may not look the same in 2 months from now, in 10 years from now, in 20 years from now, but this is the situation right now. And then we can also look at support. Are we asking others to help? Are we engaging with them in in doing it together? Um, some trick someone said here, I have the opposite problem. I let things go and the kids don't help. So some tools on that, some tools on having people be more helpful. One is definitely, like I was saying in the beginning, the more, it's kind of ironic, but the more we give space for them to feel like it's also their home, the more they're going to feel like that they want to do it, right? It's their home. The more that we're more rigid about the way things need to be, the less they feel like it's also their home that they're taking pride in, right? Also, we can give more space as to what kind of jobs they have, right? So some kids may want to help out by like helping make dinner. I would say this about Friday afternoons. I have my kids that like to bake. I have my kids that like to clean the bathrooms. I do not want to be in the kitchen, but I will scrub toilets. Like, okay. And then there are the kids that like to tidy up the living room or set the table. And it's just possible to give them the space to, what job would you like to do? And knowing that whatever doesn't get done, yes, I'm probably going to have to pick it up, but I may ask someone to do something specific. But I've seen that the more I give them the space to do the job that suits them, that they're in the mood for, that they're happy to do, the more they help more readily, right? Of course, it also helps as they get older, but even the younger ones, if they feel like it's a job that is fitting for them and that they got a choice in what they do, they're more likely to be active and do it more willingly. Um, Another thing is the way that we're asking, right? Sometimes what happens, and this is a whole topic on its own about asking for help. I think we also touched on it last week, that sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to ask for help. So we really need it. And at that point, if the person doesn't help us, we're like exasperated because like, I can't believe you're not helping me. I barely ever ask. I only ask when I really need it. How dare you say no? But what that does is put the other person in a position where whenever you ask for help, they have to help you because you really need it. And if they don't help you, they're like a jerk. And then that makes it that like this feeling every time you ask for help that like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to say yes," and that can help that kind of make them not wanna help. Does that make sense? I'm gonna go over that again because it's really, really important. If I never ask for help, so let's use it, let's say, I never ask. Should we use like a husband? Let's use a husband. I never ask my husband for help. I try as much as I can to never ask him. I know he's busy with his own stuff. He's got his work. He's got his learning. He's got his stuff with the kids. He's got his own stuff going on. I'm not going to bother him. I'm not going to ask him for help. Every once in a while, when I really need help, I may reach out and be like, "Can you please, pick up the kids?" Okay. So let's say my husband knows that I barely ever ask him. I barely ever call him and ask him for things. And I barely ever say, "Can you?" because I don't usually ask. But every time I do ask, it's really coming from this like needy place. And I'm really in a tight spot where like when I ask him, there isn't really an option for him to say no, meaning he could say no, but then I'll be really upset at him because I really needed you. How could you let me down? Which means, listen to this, is very important, which means that every time my husband hears me say, "Could you just pick up the kids?" or "I really need you to pick up the kids," what he hears is, "Uh-oh, this is a situation where I have to every time she asks me something, if I don't do it, she gets upset." They would say, "Well, I only get upset because I barely ask." Yes, but what's the pattern? The pattern is that when she asks something, when I ask for something, if he doesn't do it, I'm gonna get upset, which means it's not really a choice. You know, like when you were a kid and they'd be like, "Well, you don't have to take the test, but then you get a 0." And you'd be like, "That's not really a choice." So if the choice is, "Well, you don't have to pick up the kids, but if you don't, I'm gonna be mad at you," and like, "Why wouldn't you be able to? I barely ever ask you for anything. You must be a bad guy. You don't really love me. You don't care about me. You're all wrapped up in your own life. You don't care about the kids," whatever I make it mean, then it's not really a choice because it's either I do it or I'm a bad guy. And no one wants to be a bad guy. And when they feel like kind of put into that corner, there's a part of them that feels controlled and manipulated and like, just leave me alone. Like they just, I'm not even going to, imagine you have a friend that every time they call you, it's like 911 and you have to help them. How soon before you kind of stop picking up the phone because that's the only time they call you? And you just feel like, well, I can't help you right now. Maybe he has his own thing going on. Maybe he really is in the middle of something. Maybe he was, he really, it doesn't work for him right now. And there's that feeling of like, oh, if I pick up the phone, she's going to, like, if I can't say yes, she's going to be upset. It makes you not even want to say yes. Does that resonate? Do you understand what I'm saying here? So that's why it's very powerful to be, as much as it sounds counterintuitive, to actually ask for help, not just when you really need it, not just in the 911 situations. Because if you only ask for help putting out, I'm talking about, like not real ones, but putting out fires, then the other person doesn't really feel like they have a choice to say yes or no, which can cause that like, don't tell me what to do kind of feeling. So I invite you to be more kind of like open to asking for help and being okay with no's because that makes people feel more comfortable and open to saying yes when they can. And it also helps us accept that sometimes there will be no's, and it doesn't mean the person doesn't love us, doesn't mean our kids don't care, doesn't mean our husband doesn't appreciate us. It just may be that, like, they have other stuff going on. They're doing something else just like we're doing something else. They're tired just like we're tired, all of that. And it's very powerful to recognize that like shift. Like it's actually better to ask for more help as long as we can bring acceptance to the fact that we're not always going to get the help that we ask for. And that's okay. It's okay. I'm going to ask for help and sometimes people can help me and sometimes they can't. Just like I want my kids to ask me for help. I want my husband to ask me for help. I want my friends to ask me for help, knowing that I may not always be able to say yes. Right? And if every time they ask me for help, they get upset if I say I can't, then what will that make me feel every time I hear, "Ema, can you?" Oh no, what they asked me for now. Oh no, who's gonna get upset now? Right? Okay. So yeah. And then let's add to that appreciation and acceptance of how it's done, right? So if somebody helps, if you ask your kid to wash the dishes and they do, if you ask your husband to go to the store and he does, if you ask your kids to help with the laundry and they do, to say thank you, not just to be like, well, they should help. Because even if they should help, it's still nice when people do, right? It's nice to be thanked for something, even if it's something we're supposed to do. If I make dinner, I want people to say thank you. If I'm clean up the kitchen. I want someone to walk in and be like, "Wow, Emma, the kitchen looks so nice." Doesn't that feel good? Right? So we still like to be thanked. We can still thank them and to remember that whenever someone else does something for us, it's not going to be done exactly the way we would have done it because we're not the ones doing it. It's someone else doing it. And maybe if we would have been the one doing it, we would have gone shopping and we wouldn't have been able to find, the sauce or the peppers looked really bad. So we didn't get them. When our husband comes home without the peppers, we're like, oh, you didn't get the peppers, right? Our kids do the dishes and something's really stuck on, like, oh, you missed the, but we might have also left it to soak, or we might have also like just been like, let's just get it, out of the sink. So it's important to remember that when other people do things for us, it's not going to be done exactly the way we think it should be done. If we get stuck on that, That makes people say, "What's the point?" I remember once being at someone's house, and I was went out with the mother. I went out, it was a friend of mine, we went out together, and when we came back, her daughter had baked something in the kitchen, and the mother came in and she went to the kitchen, she's like, "Ugh, all these baking things are in the sink." And the daughter was like, I cleaned up the whole kitchen, I even cleaned up from dinner, and all you see is the baking stuff in the sink, like, why even bother? Why even bother cleaning?" And on the one hand, I totally understand what both of them were saying. The mother's like, "I went out, I come back, you chose to bake. Now the baking stuff is in the sink, so I like have to deal with that in the morning or I have to deal with that now. Like, why can't you just clean up?" On the other hand, what the daughter hears is it's never enough. It's never good enough. And she feels like I cleaned up. I cleaned more than I even made a mess with. And I left things to soak in the sink because it's too hard to wash them right away. Let them soak. And it is very difficult to bring that acceptance. Yeah, it is very hard to bring that acceptance, not go around fixing everything, being appreciative. A lot of being appreciative and being able to receive the help is letting go of how you thought it should have been done and being able to receive and be gracious for what was done to help you. Okay. And if someone's saying they don't want to help you, then you can get curious. You can even ask them, like, is there a reason why you don't want to help? Is there something that I can do to help you help me? That's actually a very interesting question that you sometimes see different I've seen it in a bunch of different contexts, this concept of like, how can I help you to help me? How can I help you to be able to support me? How is there something I could take off your plate so you'd be able to, or the person may feel like I just want to feel appreciated if I help you. Or maybe they'll say, well, I'm just feeling very stressed by everything I need to do. And say, well, is there something that I can do so that then we can be kind of helping each other and you can lean in and get curious with them. And they also see that just giving negative responses doesn't like just kind of push you away. You get to engage and express a desire for connection. Okay. So, yes, kitchens are generally houses are generally somewhat of a mess, right? If not always, then definitely more with the more people that are around. And I know I've spoken to a lot of people who have family visiting, who have more children home, who have a little bit more of a hectic schedule, or they're in a smaller, bungalow or whatever it is. And it can be harder to stay on top of everything when life is just in a different mode. Right? It's just in a different, sometimes you have less kids home, so you think, "Oh, I get to take it a little easier," and then you realize, "Oh, like, everything's still like, I didn't think I needed to clean as much, but now there's more stuff that's not getting taken care of." Right? Like, sometimes, when everyone's home, you have to do laundry every day, and then it's only, like, a few people home, you're like, "Okay, I don't have to do laundry every day," and then, at the end of the week, you're like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much laundry." So, everything can feel everything's just different. And in any of those situations, we can start with that acceptance, looking to see, what am I willing to let go of? What do I, what do I want? Like, what's important to me? What do I need to do to create that? How can I look for support? How can I accept that things will be done a little bit differently, so that, right, to stay on the ultimate focus, which always comes back to, well, what is the atmosphere that I want to have in the home? If I want people to feel safe, if I want my family to feel like it's their home, if I want it to be warm, if I want there to be acceptance and gratitude and helpfulness and a feeling of togetherness and partnership, how can I create that? Right? How can I create that? And so the question that's coming in, how can you correct them when they do make a mistake so they learn for the next time, not for criticizing? Well, the first thing you get to look at is it really a mistake or is it just not the way that you want it? Right? Sometimes we're very focused on the way I want it done is the right way. But the truth is, it's your way. It's the way you want it done. And what I would suggest is that the next time they do it for you, you could just ask, specifically, would you mind also doing this? would you mind? Oh, would you wash the dishes? Yes. And then first of all, you may just decide to let it go and acknowledge that it's not going to be done the way you want it when someone else does it. And that doesn't make it wrong. It's a mind shift. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just not the way you would do it. But is it worth it to not have to do it yourself? You could also say, I notice that sometimes there's still stuff stuck to the bottom of the pan, or I notice that the laundry. Right, the food on the dishes, I remember this. So you could say, "I notice that sometimes the food is still stuck, when I take it out of the cupboard." We have this thing in my house of people just rinsing their cups, like their mugs, especially if they're gonna use them again, but, like, some people use milk and some people don't. So, like, I'll go to make a black coffee and I'm like, "This cup has to really be clean because I might be flacic and could be, like, milk residue in the cup." So I might say, like, I've noticed that sometimes there's still milk in the cup. Can I'd love for, and I might just say it generally, I'd love for everyone to be more careful to really clean their cups so there's no halavi in the cups, right? Or I notice that sometimes the food is still stuck. And then maybe, should we get a stronger uh, sponge, or maybe sometimes I find it's helpful to use warmer water, you might say to them. Or you might say, if something's really stuck on, just you could leave it in the sink so it can soak a little bit. He might think the goal is to get everything into the cupboard as quickly as possible. You can let him know and kind of express why, as opposed to because you're wrong and I'm right? It could just be like, I've noticed that sometimes there's still food stuck, and then it's hard for me to cook the next day. Maybe just leave them soaking in the sink, or maybe we could soak them and you can do it tomorrow, or something like that. Look to problem solve together, right? They might feel like forget it. This is where, it's communication. It's the like some people say to you, just receive whatever's done and forget it. And sometimes there is still the reality of, like, sometimes people aren't aware of things. So a lot of it is how you say it and what your intention is. If your intention is, let me tell you, because you don't know what you're doing, they're going to feel that and feel like, forget it. You're sharing, especially before they do it, and you're talking about the future instead of afterwards telling them what they did wrong, or they see you pulling everything out of the cupboard and doing it again. That's where they're gonna get that feeling of like, why bother? Right? But if it's like, I'm so grateful when you do the dishes. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. Sometimes I notice that there's still food stuck on the bottom. Can you give like an extra scrub to the bottom after you clean it so that, it's like more, just less likely that there's still food stuck on it? And they might say, oh, sure. You might say, I can also give you like what do they call it? Um, we have like that thing that like you scrub and like everything comes off. I could give you one of those if that would be helpful. And you can just, kind of discuss it with them again in a more respectful kind of way. Okay. So I hope this was helpful for everyone. I wish you all a continuing, as positive an experience. Really, I invite you to focus on the experience you want to have in your home, and to allow the way that you handle these situations to kind of flow from there. Okay. So we're going to sign off for now. I'll see you all next week. Please, God. Until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.